Hello everyone. I wanted to jump on here and tell my birth story because having a natural birth is something that is actually quite rare, especially a first-time home birth. And one of the things that helped me prepare for birth itself was to read a lot of books and especially with stories of natural home birth, and also to watch videos of home birth. I did not video mine, was not expecting it. I wasn't planning on videoing it, but my baby came about 2 weeks early, so it was quite of a surprise. So I was 38 weeks and 2 days. And the day before I went into labor, I didn't know it, but I was like cleaning the house. Like I cleaned the bathroom, I washed all the sheets on my bed. I was just kind of getting things ready, not knowing that the very next day I was going to go into labor. So at about 4:45 a.m. or 4:35, excuse me, I wake up. So I normally, during pregnant, your bladder is very squished, so I would get up frequently to go to the restroom several times a night. And that night, it was no exception. So I had some really weird dreams. I don't remember what they were now, but I in my little notes that I wrote, because I wrote down my notes the very day after birth, so I would remember all of this. I had some weird dreams, and I kind of woke up to a nightmare at around 4:35 in the morning, and I went to the bathroom, and then I came back. So I lay down in bed, tried to go back to sleep. I remember checking my phone to see if it was close enough to dawn, because if it was like the sun was going to rise in the next like 30 minutes, then I was just going to go ahead and get up, because I was tired of, having a fitful sleep and weird dreams and all that, and I was just kind of over it. That was, at that time, it was about 4:41 in the morning. I was like, well, let me try and get a little bit more sleep before I start my day. So I'm laying there trying to go to sleep, and I hear what sounds like a champagne cork go pop. And in my like half awake, half asleep state, I seriously thought that my baby had punched me in the cervix from the inside. And that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like someone had just punched me right there. And I was quite surprised. And I had literally, like I said, washed my bed sheets the day before. So I jumped up because I did not want them to get messy. I was like, I just washed these. I don't want to have to wash them again. So I went to the bathroom to kind of investigate what was going on. And that was when I noticed my mucus plug in the toilet. And so I was like, okay, well, that can be a early indicator of labor. At that moment, I didn't notice or feel any water coming out, and so I didn't think that my water had broken. And but I was like, well, sometimes mucus plugs come out a couple days before you go into labor, so it could be coming, but not necessarily gonna happen right now. But boy, was I wrong. I was like, well, just in case, I have some, some period underwear, so I'm gonna go put those on. That way, in case my water does start to come out, then it'll catch it and it won't mess up all my sheets that I just washed. They coincidentally were all downstairs for some reason, so I had to go down the stairs to get them. And as I'm walking down the stairs, that's when my water starts leaking, and it just is dripping. It's not super gush like you see in the movies, like the water breaks and there's just like water everywhere. It was more of a leak. It was like just leaking down my leg, and I was like, oh, okay, this is real now. This is actually happening. I'm having this baby in the next, 24 hours is what I was assuming, sometime in there. So let's see. I'm looking at my notes here to try to remind myself. Okay, so I grabbed the underwear and I raced to the bathroom because the water is leaking down my leg. And as I'm sitting there, it's just like coming out at this point. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, I had to sit there for probably a good 10 minutes just to let everything kind of come out before I could move. Um, so once I kind of thought everything had come out, I put on the underwear, and then my phone is upstairs, and so I have to go up the stairs to get my phone. So the first person I call is my partner, and he happens to be out of town on business. So he is like 3 states away on a business trip, and he had terrible reception where he was, so he couldn't actually answer the phone, but he could text. He had enough where he was able to text me. So I told him that my water broke, and he asked me, is it time? I said yes. And he said he was on his way. So maybe he'll share his story one day about how he got here, how he got to the birth. But yeah, it was like an adventure for him to travel like 3 states away to make it back for the birth. So the next person I text are my midwives, because it's so early in the morning and I wasn't having any contractions. I didn't want to call them, so I just sent a mass text and was like, hey, just FYI, put it on your radar, my water broke. So, they were like, okay, that's fine. It's probably still super early, so just try and go get some sleep because you've got, a long road ahead of you. So just go try and relax. Don't wear yourself out. Of course, I don't listen to that advice because I've been having these weird dreams all night. So I was not about to go back to bed. I was like, nope, I'm awake now. I'm going to be up, tired of these dreams. So I'm going to go do things that I didn't get to do yesterday. So I had some things that I hadn't finished cleaning that I was planning on getting to. So I was like, well, let me just go do those real quick. So I'm running around my kitchen, straightening it up. I'm starving, so I make myself a smoothie for breakfast. Let's see. And while I was doing all that, I was trying to think of someone who could come be with me because, like I said, my partner was 3 states away and I did not want to be at my house by myself, going through this process. And so, at about 6:30 in the morning, I decide to call my friend, my best friend, who I've known since I think we were in first grade when we met. And so I called her, and she agrees to come over and hang out with me. And I get her, she's like, do I need to pick up anything on the way? So I have her grab me some coconut water so that I can help me stay hydrated through this process. And so she's on her way. I started having contractions probably, let's see, my water broke at about, because I started timing them at 6 in the morning, which means in my notes I said I started timing contractions at 6 a.m. So I know I was having contractions before 6 in the morning. So sometime between, let's say, 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. I had started having contractions. So when I started timing them at 6 a.m., they went from 11 minutes apart to 5 minutes apart by 6:30 in the morning. Then they were down to 3 minutes apart by 7 in the morning. The duration of my contractions were very short. They were, about 30 seconds. And I was keeping track on a little app that I had downloaded, and I would text my midwives, a picture of like the little chart thing that says how long the contractions are and how far apart and everything. So I would text them that. And so because of the duration, because they were only like 30 seconds long, I guess they still thought I was pretty early in labor. And, they still had the possibility of fizzling out. I was like, okay, so maybe this is still early labor. We're not active yet. Retrospectively, I was 100% in active labor, but I had no idea that I was. But retrospectively, my early labor lasted probably an hour, and then I went straight to active labor. So my contractions were coming every 3 minutes. So when I say that, for those of you who don't understand how these work, so when you time contractions, you hit start on the timer, and then you have the contractions. So I'd have the contraction for 30 seconds. Sometimes I'd go up to a minute, but they were between like 30, 45 seconds. And then I would get, let's just use 30 as, because it's an easier math, to do math. So I'd have the contraction for 30 seconds, and then I would have 2.5 minutes of relief before it would start all over again. So they were saying they were 3 minutes apart meant I had the contraction for 30, maybe 45, sometimes a minute. And then I would have a little reprieve, and then they would start again. So that reprieve ranged anywhere from like, I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, it felt like 30 seconds, sometimes of reprieve before jumping back into it again. But realistically, I think I probably had about a minute. But when you're in the middle of it, that minute, it feels very short. Let's see. So because they were coming so, close together at about 3 minutes apart, and I still assumed that I was in early labor. I was like, I'm not going to make it all day if this is what it feels like. And to clarify what it felt like it didn't necessarily hurt. It was just really intense, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't like super painful. Like in the beginning, it kind of felt like a weak period cramp, and then they got more and more and more intense. And a lot of people would probably consider it pain, but I've considered it more like an intense thing that was just like, it's like, oh, very like in your face, intense. It takes 100% concentration. And you have to, like, for me, it was like, it took all of my focus to just kind of relax my body and let it happen. And so it wasn't necessarily painful, but it was just really intense. And I was like, well, I need to relieve some of this intensity because it is exhausting. It's physically exhausting, to have to, deal with that amount of intensity. So I was like, let me go get in the bathtub, because everything that I've heard about getting in the bath during early labor was that it slows it, or maybe sometimes it even stops it. And I was like, well, at this point, I don't really care if it slows it or stops it. I need some relief. So I filled up the bathtub, and I was originally planning to have a water birth, and I was going to pick up the tub for the water birth at my next midwife appointment, but we never made it to that midwife appointment. So I didn't have a birth pool, but I had originally planned on one. But anyway, so I got in my bathtub, and I hang out in there for a while, and honestly, it was more uncomfortable, and I think not necessarily because of the water, but because I couldn't get into a comfortable position, because I really wanted to be on all fours. Like, that was the most comfortable for me. And so I couldn't do that in my bathtub because I wanted to like lay my head down and be able to relax, but I couldn't do that in the bathtub comfortably. So eventually I just gave it up, because I was like, this is making things worse. So let's see what else. So I eventually get out. Let's see. So my friend arrived while I was in the bathtub and asked what she could do. I had her, so my midwives had me print out like a checklist of things to have on hand and to prepare. And so on that, it had like instructions for making the bed. And so because there's a special way to do it. So you put like your sheet down, then you put some plastic over it, and then you put like another sheet. That way after birth, you can just take the top sheet and the plastic off, and then you have clean sheets underneath. And so I had her make both beds. So I had my master bedroom and my guest bedroom, because I didn't know where I was going to end up. So I was like, just make both of them. So she did that for me. And I had her vacuum and clean up downstairs, because I had assumed that I would be downstairs, because it's it's just, there's more space downstairs. And so I figured if it's going to last a while, I might walk around some. So I assumed that I would be downstairs. I never even went down the stairs. Once I went up to the bathtub, I never went back down the stairs, but I didn't know that at that point. So eventually I get out of the tub and I go to my bed. And on my bed, I pile the pillows up. So I take like all 4 pillows and I just stack them up so they're elevated, and I put my head on the pillows, and so I'm on all 4s that way. And that was the most comfortable position for me, and I stayed in that position the entire time. Different locations, but that was the position that I was in. Let's see. My contractions kept coming. Finally, they reached a minute long. I kind of fudged those numbers so it could be like, hey, midwives, look, they're a minute long. Can you come? Can you come now? I think when I was in the bathtub, I ended up talking to one of my midwives on the phone, and she could tell by my voice that I was in active labor. And so she was like, we're gonna come. We're just gonna come now. So she, I have 3 of them. All 3 of them came. One of them only lived about 10 minutes away from me. So basically all she had to do was gather up her stuff and come over. So it didn't take her very long to get here. So let's see. When I talked to my midwife, she said someone would be there soon. I'm relieved because at this point, things are starting to get really intense. And there was a lot of pressure on my back. And so all I really wanted was someone to just like put counter pressure back there. And at this point, I'm also really exhausted, and I'm wondering how the heck am I ever going to make it? And am I going to need an epidural at this point? However, that was also, looking retrospectively, I did not know this at that moment, that I was in transition. So usually when things are so intense and you feel like you just cannot do it anymore, the baby's about to come out. And that's exactly what happened to me. So in that moment, I get this, okay, so I get this intense feeling of needing to push, but I don't push. Like, I'm not doing anything forcefully. I'm not trying to push. My body's just naturally just pushing for me. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And that happened a couple times right before my midwife showed up. And I kind of was holding back because there wasn't anyone here. I was like, well, I don't really want to be pushing right now. There's no one here. So I think that, who knows, the baby could have come even sooner if I had, you know, relaxed a little bit and just kind of let it happen. But I was holding back a little bit, and I eventually was like, well, this might get really messy. Let me move to the bathroom, because I also had the urge to, you get the urge to like poop. And so I was like, well, let me just go to the bathroom. And so I sat backwards on the toilet. So my head is on the top of the commode. And then I have my friend bring me a pillow. So I put a pillow on the top. So I'm laying my head on the pillow. So I'm still kind of in that all 4s position, like, but sitting kind of on the back of the toilet with my head laying down. And so I sit there and I'm having these urges to push. And I just surrendered to my body. And I always thought that I would be the person to have the nice, calm, quiet, the baby just kind of naturally, you push the baby out and everything's calm and gentle. It's not me. I was a very vocal birther. Anytime I had that urge to push, I also had the urge to scream. Not in like a scared scream, like a high-pitched scared scream, but a very deep, it's like a very deep, like, kind of sound. And I would use a lot of volume. It was very loud, and I was very thankful. I don't think I would have been able to relax enough to do that in a hospital setting. Like, if I were to have this baby in the hospital, I would have been so embarrassed of this noises, of all the noises that I was making, that I don't know if I would have been able to relax enough. But because I was in my own home, I live on 2 acres of land, there's no one around us, I could make as much noise as I wanted, and so I did. I just let it out, and I would just like, it's really loud. as my midwife called it, a birth song, my loud birth song, uh, with each urge to push, with each, it's called the fetal ejection reflex. And so it's your body just kind of naturally pushing the baby out. Like I said, I wasn't consciously doing any pushing. My body was just doing it, and I was just letting it happen. So let's see. About 10 a.m., my midwife arrives, and I can finally relax enough. So I'm on the back of the toilet when she arrives. So I can finally, at this point, relax enough to just let all these urges and surges just push the baby out. And let's see. I wrote that she came in quickly. She did a quick heartbeat check with the Doppler, said everything looked good, and basically she just backed off and sat there. And my friend and her are both there, and I'm kind of listening to the conversation, and they're talking, and my friend was like, so do you think she's going to deliver soon? And my midwife's like, well, I don't like to put a time limit on these things, but she's going to deliver soon. And I was like, yes, thank God, I'm getting close. And I think that helped me get through to the little encouragement helped me get through to the end. I was like, okay, anytime now. So my midwife arrived at 10 a.m. I finally pushed him out he was born at 10:51 a.m. So let's see, a couple more details. So after sitting on the back of the toilet when I guess he started crowning. I'm guessing because I don't really quite know what was going on. My midwife had me come down from sitting on the toilet to closing the lid on the toilet, putting the pillow on the lid, and then like just kind of being on all fours on the floor. So that was very comfortable for me. So that's the final position that I was in, and that's where I delivered. I delivered in the bathroom. And I remember, this is the end of my notes, so I have to do a little bit of remembering here. So I remember the most intense part, the part that actually was painful, was the ring of fire. And when I got to that point, I remember doing a lot of breathing. My midwife actually coached me to breathe correctly through this. So I remember doing just kind of like at that point, and naturally just wanting to just like pause and wait. It feels like you're being kind of ripped open at that point, and I had to just pause, and I think that's kind of what saves me from being torn, because they were like, you tore like a tiny little bit, like not even enough to put a stitch in. So they said that me just not pushing straight through at the end is what saved that, is just relaxing and letting everything kind of stretch out, and then naturally after that pushing again. Well, my body just kind of naturally did that. This is kind of, I remember things kind of slowing down contraction wise at that point, just so everything could stretch out enough so that I wouldn't tear and the baby could come through. So they told me to put my hand down there and feel everything, and I was like, that's his head. And I remember in that moment just being like, ugh, ew, it's slimy, I don't want to touch that. And so just an interesting reaction that I had. Honestly, I didn't want to do anything. I was like, I can only concentrate on getting this baby out. I don't want to catch him. I don't want to do anything but just push him out. You're there to catch him. I had no interest in catching. I know someone would want to do that, and I always thought that I would want to. But in that moment, all I could do was just focus on getting him out. And once he came out, I didn't know this, but his hand was like stuck up by his face, which is one of the reasons why it took so long to push him out. So I think I was officially pushing for about 50 minutes or so. And my midwife said he probably would have come even faster if his hand wasn't up here by his face, but his arm was trapped by the umbilical cord. It was like wrapped around his elbow. And it squeezed so hard that he even had a bruise on his back from the umbilical cord and being squished as he went through. After that, after he finally came out and was caught, like I just had to just like be there. I like just stayed in that position, and I just was like, had to breathe for a minute. Like, I found it interesting that I had zero desire in that moment to like turn around and grab my baby or just to immediately like want to be with him. Like I, in that moment, just wanted to breathe and just be and not have to worry about that. And I think I had the space to do that because I trusted so much in my midwives that were there. At some point, I don't know when, I had 3 midwives. The other 2 showed up right before he came out, but everything is all, mixed up in my head at this point because that was so intense. I don't know exactly when they arrived, but they helped to turn me around and sit me down because I was on all fours, so they had me sit, and then I put my back against the wall, and then they put the baby in my arms, and I have a beautiful picture of me just holding the baby and just breathing and being. I remember shaking. I think I don't remember if I was cold, but I just remember shaking, just being like, maybe it was just so intense and just like shaking. And so they had to physically help me stand up and get to the bedroom and lay down in the bed. And I laid there in the bed with the baby, and pretty much we were undisturbed for the first hour. The baby was on my chest. He was still attached to the placenta. I didn't talk about that. So while I'm in the bathroom, I'm sitting with my back against the wall, and I'm breathing. I think I'm holding the baby at this point. I don't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure I am. And they have to get the placenta out. Well, they don't. I have to get the placenta out. And so I think I gave a little push from that. I think I intentionally gave like a little and it kind of just slid right out. And I do remember them commenting that I had very minimal bleeding, and I attribute that to the amount of red raspberry leaf tea that I drank. I saw a YouTube video about how it reduces the amount of bleeding. This midwife said that when she has her clients drink it, she like visibly notices the ones who do versus the ones that don't. So I was like, okay, let's give this a try. I was drinking 4 cups of red raspberry leaf tea a day, and it was like long steeped. So I have this like kettle, and I would just put some leaves in it. I would brew it, let it sit overnight, and then drink from that. And I usually brew like 8 cups at a time. Then I would drink 4 cups, and then I'd have the other 4 cups for the next day. So I made it like every 2 days. So I really think that was a big factor in the amount of bleeding that I had. But anyway, so the first hour, I was basically just me and the baby. I think my friend was there for some of it. But the midwives basically just left us alone to bond. And then after, hi cat. And then after an hour, they came and did the baby exam, where they get his weight and they measure his head and his length and all of that stuff, and check to make sure that he's pink in all the right places and whatever they do. Which he did pretty well with that. They have an APGAR score. I don't remember what his APGAR score was, but he was 9 pounds, 5 ounces, born 2 weeks early. I can only imagine how much he would have been if he had gone full term. But yeah, so my partner missed the birth by about 3 hours. He showed up about 1 o'clock, 1:30, somewhere in there. I think it was like 1 o'clock he showed up. 11, 12, 1, 2, 1 or 2, because I think it was 3 hours. And he was very surprised that I had already given birth. So from the time my water broke to the time I gave birth was about 6 hours and 6 minutes. So it was very quick labor. And I am honestly super glad that we did not do this in a hospital. I don't think I would have been able to relax enough. And being at home, I just was so relaxed. I was like, I don't have to go anywhere. I don't think I would have even made it to a hospital, because my contractions started pretty much immediately within an hour after my water breaking. And I don't think I could have driven myself there, and forever I thought I was in early labor, so I wouldn't have even noticed that I was in active labor until probably too late. So I'm thankful that I had a home birth, and that my midwife only lived about, well, one of them only lived about 10 minutes away. So that was pretty nice. That's about the end of my story. I have a cat that really wants some attention. So we're going to end it here. And in the next video, I'm going to share our breastfeeding story, which that was quite a challenge in itself. So I used a tool for that to help me through it. And I also used a tool to help me through childbirth. Maybe I'll talk about that a little more specifically sometime. But yeah, that's it for today.